Welcome back, everybody. Another edition of Power Baseball League coming at you, and we are excited today to touch on dashboards. So the last couple of weeks, we focused on cleaning up our system a little bit, bringing in some new views, getting rid of the ones we don't want. Last week, we dabbled in some charts and built out some new charts to kind of bring a graphical interface, if you will, to our data so that we can kind of understand what we're looking at a little more easier. And today we're going to pull all that together and touch on dashboards. And we're going to start, dashboards are kind of broken into two categories, right, Kylie? We got the kind of the classic ones and then these new interactive ones. So I think today we're just going to hone in on the classic ones, and then next week we'll take you down the interactive path.
Yeah, that's a great segue into looking at our dashboards here. So the big difference between a kind of the classic dashboard and a interactive dashboard, or some people might call them single stream, multi-stream. There's also, that's wrong. Let me start that again. And let me hide this thing. How do I make that go away? Okay. That's a great segue into talking about these. So the big difference between our kind of classic dashboards and the interactive dashboards is where our data is pulling from. So when we look at a standard dashboard, we can pull in any of our charts and views and dashboards from wherever we want. But when we talk about an interactive dashboard, we're going to be primarily looking at one entity, and then everything kind of works together. So when you want to filter something, you can click on that part of your chart and everything else on the dashboard filters. And it can do that because everything is relying on the same kind of base data set. And you can also set up filters within there. So how we can create a standard dashboard like we're going to do today is you can start from your Maker portal, you can go new and create dashboard. You'll also notice here we have the option to embed a Power BI dashboard. So if a dashboard has already been created, we can just click that and basically connect it up together, and then you can view that dashboard within your Dynamics. So prior to this call, I clicked on new dashboard and we have this guy here. So let's go ahead and fill this out, and we're going to call it our PBL contacts and registration, right?
Perfect. Yeah, so the intent here is we want to give our users a quick snapshot of who the contacts are. We want to see the registrations. We'll leverage those views we built last week so that we can see at a glance how many registrations do we have this year versus last year. So again, the intent here is to just give people a quick view of what's happening here and now when they look at this dashboard.
Perfect. And the other thing we didn't really talk about is because we created this from the Maker portal, we're creating a system dashboard that would be available for everyone who has access to the app, right? But we do have the option, a user could create a personal dashboard that's just available for themselves if that was something that you wanted to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first we're going to add a chart. So let's just search for our registration to start. And we know that this was the one we built last week, fees by season by age. That'll work.
Yep.
And then we can just keep that selected and we can make it bigger or smaller. Let's make it a bit taller because that's a thing. And this layout that we have here is just really based on when we selected to create it, we could choose the shell layout for it. And so I think I just picked the 3-column layout, but then you can make things wider and make changes there. And then let's go ahead and insert a list of our registrations as well. Oops. Now we test my alphabet skills. And let's make this guy a little taller, and we'll also make him a little wider to fill the rest of our page. Like that.
Perfect.
Perfect. Now, a few of the other things that we have here, you see we can add a chart, which we just did, a list, which is just what we sometimes call a subgrid within an entity, something like that. So a list of records. And that can include, of course, fields from other entities, just like you would do on any of your system views. The note is everything we're pulling in here is system items. So because this is a system dashboard, we can pull in our system charts and our system views. We also have insert assistant. So this is related to relationship assistant. If you're using any of those features, you can add that right into your dashboard. Then we have iframe and web resource. So Malcolm and I were talking about this before the call because these are things that you can pull in, but in our experience, a lot of the time we don't see too many people using them. But there could be options. Maybe you want to pull in data from an external website, or you want to integrate with another ERP system that you just want to view the data. And so that's when you would want to look at that iframe or web resource option to be able to do some of that.
I was joking, but not joking, that when I first started playing with dashboards, I actually put in one of the, I think it was an iframe and called the Weather Network website, and had that pulled up. And I was just kind of trying to mess around and see what it could do. But it actually occurred to me it could be useful, right? If you have field service agents who are out and about and going all over town, and you're centered in a city or something along those lines, and that's where everybody is, that actually could be a useful function to have that visible at a glance, because especially if people are going out. I live in an area where we had a foot of snow this morning when I got up, and school buses were canceled, schools were closed. That's something you're going to want to see. What's the weather forecast the next couple of days as I'm booking appointments out? Am I going to have a day, or maybe tomorrow afternoon if we're expecting a storm? Maybe I need to be mindful of that when so there's all kinds of interesting use cases for that that might come up.
For sure, for sure. And while you were talking, I just added in another view for our contacts and a quick chart here. Maybe this one isn't super valuable, but I think that will illustrate our point. So let's save that, and then we're going to update and add this to our model-driven app. So back in our solution, we have our model-driven app right here. Let's edit that guy. We see we have dashboards here. All were available, but we hadn't created it yet. So excellent, that's already checked off. But like we mentioned, you do have the ability to just choose the ones you want. So now that we have that, let's select our PBL, and then we can unselect those ones so that will become visible in our app. So we can save this guy, and then let's actually publish all to make sure everything looks good.
That's a handy one that you just showed there, that we spent, I think 2 videos ago, we did that little bit of a tidy up, right? There was a bunch of system views that we didn't need because they weren't relevant to our use case. So we disabled those. Same idea with the dashboards. Just get rid of the ones that people don't need. There's some default ones that come out of the box, and they may or may not be useful. So in our use case here, we're kind of replicating, not replicating, we're building what we need and getting rid of what we don't. Same use case.
Yeah, but I definitely encourage you to check out the system dashboards if you haven't already, because there could be valuable information in there that you haven't looked at yet, right? Because some of them have additional logic and things that maybe you're not using on your dashboard that you would like to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so when we went over to look at our app, we still saw that our dashboard was not visible. So we did have added our dashboard here, but our dashboard was not in our sitemap. So one thing that you want to check is if you're not seeing it there, you can edit your sitemap designer. And then what we had to do here is just drag in a new sub area and set that to display our dashboards, which came up here on our type, right? And then we were able to save and publish our app, and then that resolved our issue. So let's refresh here again, and you'll see now we're seeing our new sub area that we had just renamed dashboards. There you go. And we should be seeing our contacts and registration data right here. And you'll notice if we click on something here, we do have this drill down capability that we showed you, that you could drill down and see new charts based on that information. But note that the other form, whatever this is called, view here, is not updating based on what's happening in the chart. So that's something that's going to be cool when we look at interactive dashboards. That is going to be more exciting. So that's what we had for today, right? A few quick things about dashboards, easy to create, easy to pull in. What else did you want to say about that, Malcolm?
I want to touch on one thing you said earlier. You alluded to this being system, and so people can create their own personal ones, which is super handy, but really important that people remember, if you're building a dashboard and you've got a couple of charts and a couple of views, and you're building it as a user, so it's a sort of a user dashboard, remember that if you want to share those, you have to share all of the components. So I've seen that happen to people a lot, where they created a bunch of views or a handful of charts, and they build this great dashboard, and people see it and say, yeah, I really want that. And they go and share the dashboard, which is great, but the user opens it up and sees, well, you don't have permission to view this, because each individual view and each individual chart also has to be shared with that user. And once you've shared all those, then they'll be able to see all of the components of the dashboard. So that's just a gotcha. I've seen that come up. I've done it myself. Had that moment where you kind of look at it and go, what do you mean you can't see it? I shared it with you, but then you remember, right, you got to see all of the components. So make sure you remember that.
Every time.
We might want to touch on really quickly, if we can, is just what happens. What does this look like when we scale this down? So,
for sure.
You know, the new UI, we hear a lot about it being responsive. What does that really mean when we look at it here?
Yeah, for sure. So we can see as we made this smaller, of course, this chart is still kind of huge, but you'll see that it adjusts. We can scroll down. Our registration now becomes this more, I don't know what this is called, but we can kind of select on it to get to more records, which we could have done before. But just generally, we can see more of that data in a different format, so it looks different. And then if we expand it again, we can do that, which I think also calls out a cool thing when you're working with dynamics. Don't forget this little thing to give you guys more space too if you're working on different screens. But I think that's a great call out, because we often forget that our users are all using different browsers, different Zoom settings, and things like that. So it is important to test this in multiple sizes, multiple formats, and just see how it would work for them.
Yeah, it's a really important thing, especially with so many people being out and about on the road, different devices, tablets, and they're all different shapes and sizes. So it's really what they being Microsoft have done in terms of the responsiveness of the whole platform and making it, you know, quick and easy. So it doesn't matter what you're looking at. I mean, that's the whole intent of this unified interface, or a huge intent rather, of that whole piece. So great stuff that they're pushing out. Exciting stuff. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, that's a fairly simplistic view of a dashboard. I mean, you could get really complex. A couple things to call out: when you're in the cloud-based, you're limited to 6 components. So each chart, each view, each thing, those are considered components of your dashboard. So you're allowed 6. I know on-prem you can get into the back end and trick the code a little bit. You can bump that number up, but when you're on in the cloud rather, and in the new D365, you're limited to 6. So you might have to think strategically about, okay, we've got 6 spots. Maybe we have 10 things we want to show. So let's break them up. Maybe instead of contacts and registrations, we might have to do, here's a contact dashboard, here's a registration dashboard. So just things to be mindful of. But other than that, I'm excited about next week, because we're going to dive into that interactive dashboard, which brings a whole new flavor to the tool.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.